My mic shifts sometimes, so I'm sweaty. I'm always like nervous and thinking like, oh, I'm going to come up now, and my morning didn't go the way that it was supposed to go or that I planned. You never have that, or do you? No, never, eh? No. So, and actually, I wanted to start about abide, because we're going to do this whole series about being an apprentice of Jesus, and it lasts until April next year. So there are many things to learn about that. Amen. And then I volunteered immediately, like, oh, let me do the first time on November. Luckily, I had Brian last weekend was here, and he already started with that. So then I was thinking, what do I have to tell still? Because he already touched on that. He already used the words in the Bible. So I can basically say, like, just look at the video from last week, and then now we can have coffee. No, we're not going to do that. But abide, as we talked about last weekend already, it's something that we can... it means actually to remain in or to dwell in. Remain or dwell in. So then I go to the Dutch, and because that's my language, that's like helps me to kind of think, and then I'm like, okay, to dwell in Jesus. So how do I do that? But then there was the great example that Brian actually gave about the gildes in Dutch, in the Netherlands. A guild, or gilde, so it's called in Dutch, that was where you could become a member when you were a master at something. But before you could get there, they had all students. But that student is not what we call students today. That meant that you would be going to somebody who was a master, and he would learn you this craft. And that meant also that you would be taken up into his entire life. Like, how does he do this as a master? And a student today is either working for a certificate, a diploma, a title, or something else. It's quite different, because it doesn't mean that you are exactly copying what your master is doing. And that's what actually helped me to more understand what abide in Jesus would mean. It's more like this training as a student or a follower, or for a guild or for a trade or for something that you really need to master. So, and then I was looking at this one. What do you see in this picture? Or what do you think you see? I found it I looked for a picture about this setting, and this is one of the things that I kind of felt the most close by, but you can make a lot of other pictures. There are very religious pictures about the same. This is a gathering. There's somebody in the middle. And if you look at it, the one in the middle looks very young. So what could it be? If you look at Bible stories, what could it be? Could this one be? 12-year-old Jesus. But there is something strange about this picture. Because I just told you about guilds and about like being a student and being an apprentice. How did it work normally? From a young age, you would be trained and you would become the master. But if you look at this picture, you see them looking at him as if he is teaching. That's strange. But still, that's what was in those days was pretty normal. And why 12? I looked into it. But usually when young Jewish boys were taught, they started to learn the Torah between 5 and 12 years of age. And they would completely learn the Torah, and they wouldn't learn it by heart. They would know everything. And then when they were 12, they would advance if they were very good. If they were not very good, or the majority of them, they would go back to their families and to learn a trade, to work at a farm, to learn a carpenter, to be a fisherman, whatever. They would go and do that. But the ones that were really exceptionally good, they went on to learn about the Bible. And they would learn between the age of 12 and 17 about the entire Old Testament. And then they would learn that by heart. And by the age of 17, they would know everything about the Old Testament. Everything by heart. Because how would you else tell the stories? There was no Bible at the time. There were some scrolls, but there was no Bible. So they learned that. And then if they were really, really, really good at the age of 17, then they would advance and go and find a master or a rabbi at the time that would teach you even more. But you had to pass an exam at 17. An exam with the rabbi that you wanted to be with, and he would ask you a lot of questions. So he could definitely know you knew the Old Testament entirely, and you had thought about it, because he would ask some questions that was part of his teaching, his ministry, his being a rabbi. They had a certain way of thinking, and also that, and they wanted to know, are you able to follow my teaching? And if you passed that, they would say, or they might say, come with me and follow me, and I will teach you. And if you did that very well, then at a certain moment he could say to you, go and find your own students. And then you would be developing your own rabbi, or being your own rabbi. That was the way it used to be in those days. So 12 is not a really strange age for him to be there, but everybody was astounded. Let's look at the Bible in Luke 2. Luke 2, verse 42. And there it says the following. When he was 12 years old, they went up to the feast according to the custom. After the feast was over, while his parents were returning home, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. But they were unaware of it. Thinking he was in their company, they traveled on for a day. When they began looking for him among their relatives and friends, and they did not find him, they went back to Jerusalem to look for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. Everyone who heard him was amazed at his understanding and his answers. It's incredible. And that small passage learns me two things. Jesus is very special, because he reverses the normal way of teaching and learning. Because at his age, if he was that good, he should advance but it was the other way around. The rabbis and the teachers were learning from him. So that's very special. The second thing I learned is that his parents were looking for him for 3 days. Now, my daughter just went on a plane to Johannesburg yesterday. The trouble me and myself and Saskia had to let her go by herself to Johannesburg, I cannot imagine. But they were not worried at all. They only found out after a day he was missing. and then they searched 3 days. Like, how did that work? That teaches me that community at that time was completely different from the way we do it now. And also that is an example for us. As we are a community as a church, shouldn't we also look at that and integrate that in our being a community? Because it is very normal, and we sometimes we use that word. It takes a village to raise a kid. Now, I have 4 children. I'm very grateful for that. But I'm also very grateful for all of you guys and girls. Because, of course, we are the parents, but they are raised because of all of you and all the interactions they also have with you. And that's what happened with Jesus too. He was taken care of by the entire community, by the ones that they were traveling with. But he was very self-sufficient, as you noticed. Because if you read on, he says to them, didn't you know I should be here? Because I need to be at my Father's house. So he was like, you didn't understand. I needed to be here. So he was very, very mature in that sense. But still, he was where he needed to be. So, then these are the 3 steps that I just talked about. If you started with your rabbi in those days, the first started out with being with your rabbi. Let's look at Mark 3. Not you, Mark, the other Mark, the Mark in the Bible. Mark 3, verse 14. There it says, He appointed 12, designated them apostles, that they might be with him and that he might send them out to preach. So, this was the part where you went to your rabbi and he took you on or not. Jesus, of course, did it a bit different. He didn't wait for someone. He went to 12 and he said, like, you 12, come with me. I appoint you as apostles. And then, what he asked them to do is like what we did, what I talked about when you are an apprentice in a guild, an apprentice of Jesus. They became like him, or they were at least trained to become like him. Let's look at Luke 6, verse 40. In Luke 6, verse 40, it says, a student is not above his teacher, but everyone who is fully trained will be like his teacher. So, this is the goal of learning from your rabbi, is to become like your teacher. Not being above it, not being below, but become like. That is what Jesus wants of us. That we become like him. And then, when we are taught, when we learn, there's a final step, step 3, phase 3. Like what I just told before is like going out and be your own rabbi. That means for us to live like Jesus, to live like your rabbi. Let's look at Matthew 8:28. Verse 19. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of age. And we see this as a commission, but it's actually just go and do what I just told you. Because I helped you, I saved you, I learned you how to walk in your life. And now just tell anyone else. It's not like, how many did you meet today? How many did you do? That is not it. If you live like him, it will flow automatically out of your life. But the thing is, I'm not Jesus. So sometimes I fall, sometimes I fail, sometimes I do things differently. Like this morning, because I was preparing to come over here. And so I woke up and I did my prayers and I did some breakfast and I was like, this is going well. It's 8 o'clock. I have plenty enough time left to get here. The tires to give it some more air. And there was somebody there, was just finished, drove away, and I was like, I then drove into the spot and started. And there was honking behind me or to the left of me, and I'm like, and there was somebody, hey. And I'm like, what is that? And there was a woman with a car apparently waiting for the next spot, but I was already there. So I'm like, whatever, I just have to do this one tire and then I'm gone anyway, but she made a whole fuss about it, came out of the car, started to touch me. Frank was like, wait a minute, you're getting at my dad. So, and then I'm like, why are you making this fuss? And then at the same time I was thinking, I'm going to preach about this one. Now, how do I react and give an example to my boys? And then later, within the next 35 minutes, I'm going to preach about this one. Oh, wait a minute. My inner self would have reacted differently, probably. But then I said, okay, I didn't see you. Let me just park my car and you can go first. Because the guy that was just drove away, he also stopped because he needed to do something else. And he said, yeah, she was waiting. And I didn't see her. So I'm like, okay. But the inner battle that I felt is the inner battle that we can feel if we're following Jesus. Because sometimes we do know what the right thing is to do, but our feelings and emotions, they tell us something completely different. And that's what I was feeling this morning, because I also felt like, I don't want to let you guys down. I want to be here in time. I want to be prepared. And now I'm coming in 3 minutes before the service starts. So, sometimes you just learn through these kinds of situations, and we will all have those. But the one difference is, having Jesus as your example, that may just be the difference at these times, at this one split-second moment. And of course it helps that the boys were in the car, because it helped me even earlier to realize. And then it also helps to be part of this community, because what kind of example would I be if I would do that to you guys? Or I would be like only acting on my emotions. And then this helps to be abiding in Jesus is like following him, following in his footsteps, and be like this student. And this student, I fear, even if I'm as old as Patrick, I still need to learn. And I will always be learning. So guys, if you're almost finishing your studies, or maybe in a few years or whatever, don't think you're finished learning. Never. You will always be learning. And that's the great thing. Now, let me see. Where am I in my story, actually? Oh, yeah. That part. So, can you all read it? Do you think you understand what it's saying? Because this is something that we do among each other. Or did. Maybe the older disciples are more aware of this one. Does it do anything to you if you read this? You're very quiet. I'm like, oh yeah. Because there's a difference between the two. What would you say is the difference between the two? Don't worry, there are no wrong answers. I will just explain later, but maybe you have already the idea. What's the difference between the two?
The first one is like an action.
Yeah.
Like it's a short time period.
Yes, it's a short time.
The second one, you made it a noun. So
Yeah.
it's your identity, which
Mhm.
changes.
Yeah.
The time is way longer.
Correct. That's one of the explanations. And it goes even deeper. Is there somebody else? Okay. It says like the first one is more an action, which is short term. And the second one is something that you live out. So that's longer term, it's yourself. But there's something deeper behind it if you think through. So let me ask a second question with this one. Who is responsible in the first? And who is responsible in the second? Responsibility at the first is at somebody else. Because I'm going to be discipled, or somebody disciples me, or I'm going to disciple somebody else, so I'm responsible for this one. The other one, I am a disciple, I am responsible. So if you are like what Jesus wants us to be, a disciple of Him, and then become like Him, then you are the disciple and you are responsible. And there is nothing easier, also for me, in the example I just gave you this morning, I could say like, but this woman, she didn't get in line, she stood somewhere else, it was not visible, so she has all the... But the truth is also, I didn't really look very well. I didn't see it, I just assumed I was there. So, where is the responsibility? Where do you put the responsibility? Yeah.
I think also a big difference between the first one and the second one is the second one is about your identity.
Yeah.
Like we've been discussing for the previous months, I think,
Yeah.
when we talked about identity. And for me, reading I am,
Mm-hmm.
it's all about identity, right? It makes a big
True.
difference.
Because the main difference is this is who you are yourself, so this is your identity. The other one is just an action, what you just also said. It's what I do, or somebody else teaches me to do. So all the responsibility is outside of me, it's not from me, it's something that I get. And then you get that you follow rules, things that have been spoken of, and it's completely different than something that you feel you are, and it's coming from your inside. So now I have a few questions for you guys that you can maybe form small groups of 4 or 5 or smaller, and then go about these 2 questions. And these can hit very deep. Because yes, of course, we're all disciples. But am I really? Am I acting as one? Am I feeling that? Am I really inside that? And what am I abiding in? Is that really Jesus? Or is that my job, my education, my inheritance or heritage, where you come from? What is it? And it doesn't matter, you can interchange these. There's no first question, second question, or whatever. They can just form. And there is no right and wrong answer. Because we all have this at times in our lives, and also now maybe. And there is no wrong thing. Because if we just realize, that's what these questions do. It's helping you to realize, where am I at this moment in my life? Or if you do it in a year and you ask these questions. It helps you to realize. And if you realize where you are and you say like, that's not where I want to be, then you can change. So these questions are not right or wrong. They are just helping you to make next steps and to realize where you are. So I give you a few minutes. Turn your chairs, talk to each other. Thank you for the time that you spent together. I'll probably have to end off your questions and conversations right now. So, can I ask someone who wants to share about what you just discussed? Is there somebody who wants to share something, or tell something? Please let me know. Is there somebody who wants to share or tell something? When I was, if not, it's fine. I know it's very private, you all have. I have the same thing. But this is what I came up with at the end, thinking about it. To abide is not a technique that you learn so that you control yourself, your convictions, or what God will do to you. It's not a technique. It is a skill. Like the ones the boys and students in the guilds learned. It's a skill. You need to practice, and you need to practice a lot. And practicing means you will fail. Because at the moment you fail, you will learn. And this is some discussions that I had at home with my children in the past. And it reminded me a lot of how I felt when I was younger and I was a student. I thought, so did my children, which is not strange if I was already feeling the same thing, that I already needed to know a lot. So I didn't really grasp the part of being a disciple follower or practicing being a student. Because if you're a student, the thing is about it that you learn because you do not know or you do not know how to do things. And you need to practice in order to learn it. And it is fine. It is fine if you make a mistake. It is fine if some things don't work and that you need to learn. And then it's great that you're part of a community. Then it's great, is what I was raised. I was raised in a village. Why was so great? One of the most things, for especially younger people in the ages between 18 and 25 say is like, oh, that village felt so controlling. True, because everybody knows everything from everyone. But until that age of 16 or 15, whenever you feel that coming up, you were taken care of by the whole community because they knew what you were doing and they saw what was happening. And if you were in trouble, you were helped by a lot of people. And that's still. And then we know when we get older, we need that village, we need that community because we help each other. So we practice, we fail, and then we master. And that's basically throughout your whole life. Am I a full master right now at my age? No. Maybe Patrick is almost. Or Wilco. We just celebrated his birthday, the 17th. Oh, okay, 70. You know, you should have mastered everything. And then Wilco is so humble, he says like, no. Master. You know? So this is what we do. And this is why we abide. Now we will go and go to communion, but that's why I wanted to look at these verses. Please look at even Jesus had to become a master. Although he was already our example, he still had some things that he needed help from his master, from God. Let's go to Luke 22, verse 39. Jesus went out as usual to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples followed him. On reaching the place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." He withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling on the ground. When he rose from prayer and went back to the disciples, he found them asleep, exhausted from sorrow. "Why are you sleeping?" he asked them. "Get up and pray so that you will not fall into temptation." This is the example that we follow as disciples. Jesus also showed that he needed to pray. He had some things to go through. He was not ready for that at the time. He needed to connect with his Father, with God. And then he was strengthened. God sent him angels to strengthen him. It says here, literally. This is what we also need. We also need the connection with God, but we also need the connection with each other, because we need to strengthen each other. We need to help each other. And this is how we can follow and abide in Jesus. So let's pray for his great example, and we might follow him in that. Dear Father, thank you for